there, everyone. Welcome to Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. My name is April Sansom, and I have the privilege of being the executive director of Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And we are coming to you live today from our beautiful jewel in the Texas Hill Country. I'm very, very happy to say that I have an amazing team today. We've had a little technical difficulty, but what would going live be without a little bit of technical difficulty? And it just gives me the opportunity to say how amazing the team is to come together and solve these problems, just like they do on a regular basis. So I would like to talk about the team members that are here with me today. You're going to be seeing all of them in a little bit. But right now, I'm just going to introduce who's here. We have our ornithologist, Christina Farrell. We have our ranch manager, Stephen Fulton. We have our director of education and herpetologist, Jared Holmes. We also have our amazing chairman of the board and his beautiful wife, Rusty and Ellen Yates. They are very much helping us on the camera side of things and the lighting. And they're a very, very wonderful asset to this organization. So we're super glad they're here. And we also have Luke Mann, who is helping us with the switchboard. And he's doing a great job. He's been a camper out at Camp Selah. He spent a lot of time out here at Bamberger Ranch Preserve, so we're really glad that he's out today helping us in this wonderful endeavor that we're starting today. So the reason why we're going live today, and we have some really fun stuff to show you, is that we are kicking off our second Selah Spectacular virtual fundraiser. We, at Bamberger Ranch Preserve, we have a long tradition of having an annual family day and picnic where we have people come out to the reserve. We have activities for kids and families to do. And obviously, for the past couple years, we have not been able to do that in person. So last year was our first year of getting completely innovative and creative and going virtual in terms of our Selah Spectacular virtual event. So we're back this year with more fun and some new twists and some really great stuff lined up for you this afternoon. We are at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we have a dual mission. And our dual mission is to protect the 5,500 acres that we have the honor of being the caretakers of, as well as to engage in outreach and education with landowners in Central Texas and beyond to help them learn about our journey of ecological restoration and good land stewardship. So that very important dual part mission is why we're here today, because one of the important things that any nonprofit does is raise funds for their mission, and we are no different than anybody else in that regard. So we want to let you know how appreciative that we are of all the support from Selah supporters everywhere. And we want to let you know that any and all donations we appreciate very much. We've actually already gotten a few donations today, and we're so grateful for your support. And you know very well that we will use that support very wisely to support our critical dual part mission. So thank you all very much in advance for your support. Aside from these wonderful, wonderful donations that are already coming in, we have some really exciting items for sale as part of our wonderful virtual event. And we're going to be talking a lot more about those in a little bit. I'd also want to make sure that I mentioned my team here with me today, and I want to make sure that I say thank you very much to all of you for being here today, for overcoming our technical difficulties, and for all the fun we're going to have over the next few hours. So thank you all, wonderful colleagues, for being here. Great. So the next thing I would like to do is I would like to actually introduce in person one of said colleagues that I've mentioned. And Jared Holmes, as I said, is our Director of Education, as well as a herpetologist. And what, if I wanted to be more, oh goodness, hello. If I wanted to be more specific with that term herpetologist, I would say that he is a squamologist.
Squamatologist.
Squamatologist. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So this is Jared, and Jared's going to tell us about some of the things we're going to be talking about today. He's going to be telling us about activities. So take it away, Jared.
Thank you, April.
Thank
and thank
you.
you everybody for tuning in. Today is very, very exciting. Our second virtual picnic, and already we've had the same number of technical difficulties as we did last year.
Well, isn't that great?
So let's just hope it doesn't get any worse, right? But we appreciate everybody staying with us today, and I want to harp on last year a little bit more and talk about how successful that was and how that helped us during the pandemic. And while it's been a very, very long year, in March, we slowly started to open up. And we have been able to educate 5 different schools in person on site. And with those 5 schools, we had over 200 people actually in person.
Wow.
Which I think is fantastic. But it wasn't just in person what we were doing. A lot of what I was doing and you were doing and the entire team was doing was sitting on a Zoom just like this.
You know, and I'll just take this moment to say that there's one member of our team who is especially excited about Zoom. He loves Zoom more than anybody else on our team. And his name is Stephen Fulton, the ranch manager. Loves Zoom meetings.
It's true.
Okay,
And
sorry to interrupt.
And he is available for Zoom chats for a small fee. Okay. So I also want to say that another nice kind of silver lining of the pandemic and those Zoom phone calls is we were seeing the last year's virtual picnic-a-thon was seen in, if I remember right, 32 states and 11 countries.
Yes, I believe that's right. 32 states and 11 different countries.
Yep. And it brought to us a school in Maine that I was able to Zoom in and teach about. It brought us a Zoom call with a classroom in Nevada and a college class in California on top of Texas A&M, Texas State, and wonderful master naturalists and other groups that are like that.
That's really great.
So we've been very, very active still with our education mission and our conservation mission. And our conservation mission is still really going strong. We've got a lot done. And, you know, April, I think it's probably time you talk about another partnership that really touched on that conservation mission.
Well, that's a great idea, Jared. I think I will.
All right.
The partnership that Jared mentioned is our partnership with the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute, a fantastic group of people who do a lot of good service for the people of the state of Texas. And we have a partnership with that organization where we have provided virtual field days and virtual information for landowners engaged in good land stewardship. We've called that Leopold Live, based on the conservation and land management legacy of Aldo Leopold. And so we're very, very excited that we had Leopold Live version 1 last fall, and now we're fully engaged in Leopold Live version 2, where once again we are providing very well produced and edited videos for landowners that help them answer some of the questions that they might have as they engage in their conservation and restoration journey.
Absolutely. So if you have any comments or you have any questions for maybe ideas of episodes for Leopold Live, leave them right there in the comments and we'll get back to them. And today is going to be heavily technological. Okay, so we got a fancy switchboard and that's what Luke is working. And so with that, the Selah Spectacular Sail also involves technology, or WikiLeaks, as Mr. Bamberger would call it. So if you go to bambergerranch.org, there is a click, there's a icon that says Selah Spectacular right there. You can click on that. You can see the live stream right there, and the video will be there tomorrow after we're done. But not only that, it will give you the list and the itemized details and how you can actually purchase at 6 o'clock this evening those Selah Spectacular sale items. Eventbrite is the website you're going to go to, and we'll talk a little bit more about that now, but I want to get everybody excited, and I want to get everybody introduced to the entire team. So from here, I'm going to kick it over to Christina and Stephen to tell you a little bit more about those Selah Spectacular sale items.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you, April. So as Jared said, I'm Christina Farrell here to talk to you guys with my partner, Stephen Fulton. And we're going to be getting you guys excited about the Selah Spectacular sale items. If you've been following us on social media, you have likely seen that we have been hyping these sale experiences, trying to get everyone engaged and interested in them. But as a staff, we are really excited to talk to you about them and tell you about them. We all got together and kind of said, you know, we don't want to have items that people can buy. We want to have experiences, because that is what is so special to us about working here and getting to be here every day, is experiencing the wonder that is Selah, and we want to share that with you guys. So we got together as a staff and said, okay, let's think of some experiences that we can offer to people to get them out here to, you know, help and of course support us with our fundraiser, but really to share this wonderful place that we get to work at. So the two of us are just going to kind of give you a quick rundown on the 10 different experiences that we have that Jared said are going to be up on our website today at 6 p.m. But just kind of briefly, we're going to kind of hype each one, tell you about all 10, and if you want to, you can always go back to the website to reference them, and then of course check out our social media. I've made posts about each of those individual items if you want to get a quick rundown on each of them. But to start off, the 10 that we're going to talk to you guys about, I will start with my favorite. I am a little bit biased, so I'm going to start with the one that I will technically be the most involved with, which is our birding excursion out here on the BRP. So this one is really exciting because whoever decides that this experience is one that they just have to have, they're going to come out here, they're going to spend an evening on the ranch so that they're out here and ready to wake up at whatever time they want to get going, so that we have an entire day out here for birding the entire 5,500 acres. I feel very lucky to know some of the best bird spots. I think Stephen has shared with me over my time here where exactly all of the best birding spots are, and so I'm really excited to share those with whoever is excited about this excursion. And one of my favorite things about birding is that, you know, it's fun to do with someone who's never done it before. If you see this item and you think, I want to have that experience, but I don't know a lot about birding, that's okay. One of my favorite things is to show people their first painted bunting or their first summer tanager. It doesn't matter how many I've seen, it's always exciting to show them to someone who's a new birder. Or if you're a very experienced birder and you say, I have to come out here and do birding, that's also you know, just as fun, because then we get to go on like scavenger hunts where we have to find a black-cap vireo, or we have to make sure that you see a vermilion flycatcher. So whoever decides to bid on this, you know, amazing experience, I'm really excited to come out here with you guys and show you all of the amazing birds on the ranch. So that's our first item. Had to start there because I'm biased, as I said. I'll kick it over to Stephen to talk about one that he is likely as biased. Take it away, Stephen.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Hello, everybody. Yes, the first item I'd like to talk about is one that is kind of near and dear to me. Growing up in a hunting family, just being able to offer a weekend for you all to come out and hunt it's going to be a blast. So if you have a hunting enthusiast in your family, or you have a friend that really enjoys hunting, the hunting weekend it's a set weekend, so I hope it works for your schedule. It's February 18th to February 20th of 2022. So we're talking about next February, and it's up to 5 people. So if you have a family of 5, that's great. If you know another couple, so 2 couples, that's also just as well. So we have a pretty good array of animals that will be on the list for harvesting, but I can't think of of a better way to go out and put some more protein in your refrigerator than to come out here and spend the weekend with us.
That one is so exciting because you've been managing our hunting program forever. It's so well established, and it's one of the reasons that that date is so specific, is that there are people who are going to be out here every single weekend except for the one that we've blocked out for you guys to work with Stephen.
Yes, and I'll tell you, just from some of my personal experiences, I've had some of my favorite memories are from here on the ranch, working with youth hunters, and them harvesting their first animal. It was some of those were even better than my own children harvesting their first animals. Don't tell them that.
That's awesome. All right, so the third experience that I want to hype up is one that myself and Stephen don't know as much about, but our coworker Jared is going to be heading this one. This one is a snake demonstration, which although I will not be leading it, I can tell you that I was privileged enough to get to witness this happen just last week. Jared did a very brief snake demonstration for the Science Mill, Science Outside Nature Camp that we had out here on the ranch. And it was so incredible to get to see these amazing animals up close and personal. And this is one that you can be as involved as you want to. If you say, I've never touched a snake before, I'm so excited to see all the different species, you can get to hold them and touch them and learn about them. If you say, that's not my thing, but I do love learning, this is as involved as you want to be. And it's so cool because, I saw it last week and I'd seen one maybe a year ago, and there's so much information out there, and to learn from an expert about anything is always so exciting. So this snake demonstration is a really cool experience, and we're very excited to offer it. And I'll kick it over to Steve to talk about another experience that we're going to have that is also an animal that doesn't fly. Take it away, Steve.
Well, there are some,
That's true.
I guess you'd call them soaring fish. They don't really fly.
Yeah.
But yes, another one of our experiences that you can come join us here on the Bamberger Ranch is a fishing experience. This will be a day-long fishing experience for up to 4 people. We have multiple ponds and even one small lake, and we have a flowing creek if we have enough rain. But all these bodies of water that we have on the ranch have several species of fish that are ready to bite your hook, and they're all very tasty. I won't be leading this one per se, but we have a couple of interns that we can call on that are really, I would consider them professional fishermen, and maybe even my son, who's a really strong fisherman, might join in on that too. But come out and enjoy our water, catch some fish, take a swim. When you get too hot, whatever you catch, we can prepare it for you and cook it there that day, or we can just dress it up for you and you can send it home with you in your cooler. And again, add some of that wild grown protein to your freezer. So come join us.
Awesome. So I will kind of segue into, if you're not all about the fishing, our next item that is up for sale is our Selah swimming hole experience at Madrone Lake, which is a really exciting opportunity. I was thinking about this just last night. One of the most amazing things about being in the Texas Hill Country is the fresh water, and especially here on Selah, to have a swimming hole that is just for you and your friends and family, not open to the public, that is an absolute rarity in this day and age. So our fifth item that I'm going to talk about is just this incredible day where you and 10 people get to come out and have the beautiful Madrone Lake all to yourselves. You get to have a fun day of swimming, canoeing. If you want to do some fishing, you're more than welcome to. Absolutely beautiful day to spend out there, have a beautiful picnic lunch. This is really a one-of-a-kind opportunity. I would encourage you to see if you can find a similar activity like this one in this area of the state. And I think we've got a pretty unique item here with our swimming hole experience. So definitely a special one to keep an eye out for. I'll take it over to you.
And the thing to keep in mind for all of these experiences, this will be a very private experience. So the only people that'll know about it is the people you bring with you. So just like Vegas, what happens here, well, I'm not going to go that far. But experience number 6, we call it the Baddie Starry Night, and we put on a few of these in the past. If you've been here before, or if you read about us, you probably know that we have the world's largest and first man-made bat cave here on the Bamberger Ranch, and our most recent estimates is that it houses close to 500,000 Brazilian free-tailed bats. And there's a couple other species that hang out in there with them, but it's mostly Brazilian free-tailed bats, or sometimes you hear them called Mexican free-tailed bats. They're our most common species here in Texas. But if you've seen emergences at other caves, you know how spectacular watching a bat flight or a bat emergence is. And every cave is different. I've had the opportunity to view 3 different emergences from 3 different caves, and they've all been just exquisite in their own particular way. Now, after the bats have all flown out and are out there hunting and catching their bugs, as a cherry on top, we have an observatory here on the ranch. We have some excellent night skies because of the surrounding hills that block off the light from surrounding communities. So we'll open up the observatory. I'll fire up the big 14-inch diameter Celestron telescope, and we'll get you a closer look at some of the things that's really far away.
All right, the 7th experience that I'm going to talk to you guys about is one that I was thinking just this morning. If I was a donor and I saw that the BRP was having this fundraiser and I couldn't pick the bird one and I had to pick something else, this is the one that I would go for. It is our spectacular scavenger hunt, hike, camping. It's got a lot going on. But the part that I'm so excited about is that I love to hike, and I just love the idea of kind of geocaching, hiding all of these items for whoever decides, this is up to 4 people, to come out here, spend a day hiking our beautiful trails and just discover the different geocaches and, items that we've hidden for you guys. Just sounds like so much fun to me, and it's, tell us who you are whenever you bid on this experience, and, if you've got little kids, that's more fun because we can hide things for them, or, if you're really into birding, tell us a little bit about you so that we can make this scavenger hunt hike ideal for you guys. So beautiful day of fun scavenger hunt hiking that's just kind of cherry on the top. You get to camp out here, which is not something that a lot of people do. I know I've done it, Steve has done it, but camping out here, it's a private ranch, so it's not something that happens very often. So just another reason that this is such a really exciting experience. A beautiful day of hiking and finding cool surprises, and then camping under the stars, roasting marshmallows. So like I said, if I couldn't have the bird one, I think this is the one that I would have to go for.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, number 8. This is the first time I would say that we've offered this type of experience. I've taken a few of the staff members out and got ourselves in some sticky situations with some beekeeping. So we've had bees on the ranch, honeybees on the ranch for, well, as long as I've been here. I think it's been a few years before I got here, maybe 15 if that's a few, when they started beekeeping here on the ranch. But here in the last 3 or 4 years, I really became more interested and kind of amped it up a notch. So I have a couple of dozen beehives here on the ranch, and that I would welcome the opportunity to give you the experience and maybe give you some knowledge about beekeeping. Now, my beekeeping style is kind of maybe a little more serious of a style of beekeeping. The reason why we have the hives is production of honey. So if you really like that sweet stuff and you're interested in having bees on your place, or you're just interested in bees, period, come out, spend most of a day with me. We will get into some beehives. I'll show you the ins and outs of beekeeping, and maybe at the end we'll have a nice sweet treat. Another experience. We've got so many. We're ever going to hit the end of this list.
We're close.
Number 9. We're calling it oryx wrangling, and this is an experience that at first blush, wrangling a scimitar horned oryx doesn't seem like it'd be that much fun. But I have taken some guests out for an experience just like this, and all the staff really they fight over who gets to have the seat in the truck next to me when I go to wrangle the oryx. Now it's not wrangling the adults. That would be very dangerous. But it's a task that we do anyway, as far as with our management of our scimitar horned oryx herd. An international endangered species. Our herd here is part of a species survival program. Well, again, we're trying to maintain a good diversity as far as our herd, and to do that, we have to identify every animal, and that's kind of difficult to do because though they are in a captive situation, they are still quite wild. But so our opportunity to catch that baby oryx. Now we're talking about a newborn. We're talking about a day old, maybe 2 day olds, preferably a day old. That's our opportunity to catch that animal and record the information that we need to make sure our management program stays successful. So this is a task that I'm doing anyway. Now I'm just inviting you to join me on it and have your photo op with what has been described as a super cute animal. So join me for that one. I believe it is an overnight experience in April. I think it's on April 9th and 10th.
Yes.
That is the date, the 2 days that we have set aside for that. That is the time of year where we have, because we kind of control the breeding, that's the time of year where most of the calves are born. So that's the best opportunity, the best time of the year I can't guarantee a birth, but it'll happen. And probably it will happen multiple times during your stay, and each time you'll be invited to join along.
And as Stephen said, I can personally attest, I got to help out with this for the first time this past April, and super cute is the correct phrasing for that. All right, so we have talked about 9 of our items, and so now for the 10th one, the big one, you'll have to help me because there's no way that I can fit this all into the last little bit of our segment here. This is one that we're calling our Selah Spectacular Weekend, but really it is a build your own Selah experience, because it is basically taking everything that we've talked about and more. This is your weekend. Whoever decides that this experience is one that they have to have, this weekend is completely up to you. You decide when you have it, you decide what you want to do. If you want to go birding with me, done. If you want to go beekeeping with Stephen, done. If you want to do anything, hang out on the lake all by yourselves and you want us to go away, done. This is completely up to you. It is a build your own weekend. It is everything that you're hoping to get out of a weekend here and more. So this one is one that will talk to you, figure out exactly what your perfect weekend looks like, and we'll make it happen.
Yes, it's totally custom. Some other things included in this weekend is we were bouncing around the idea of having a Selah potluck dinner, and which you all would be the guests of honors for.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's whatever you would like to do. If it's the right time of year, there could be a swimming foray,
Yep.
especially if it's in the summer. There could be a hunting, little hunting expedition. There could be some fishing experience. So again, it's a custom build your own weekend, and it's for, did we say up to 10 people?
10 people.
10 people. So it's a steal. Come join us for that one for sure.
So we have talked about that one. There's no way we could describe everything. I've tried to put up, tons of stuff on the website for you to say, I want to do that, oh, I want to do that. But really, this one is, if you can think it, we can do it out here. So really excited about that one. Feel free to ask us any questions. We are live. If you guys have any questions about any of these experiences, drop us a question. We're happy to answer them. I've been making lots of social media posts. Feel free, if you're not sure about, the dates, the times, how is this going to work, drop us any questions. We are just so excited to be offering these experiences to all of you. So thank you guys for listening to Stephen and I talk so eloquently. And now I will pass it back over to my colleagues.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christina and Stephen. You guys did a great job. This is a perfect opportunity for me to say that one of the things I love, one of the many, 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 many things that I love about my job is that I get to work with an incredibly talented and wonderful group of people. And you have just seen evidence of that from Christina and Stephen. And so they did a really, really wonderful job of talking about all of these great experiences that we have come up with. These are really, really great opportunities for people to come out here to our jewel of the hill country and experience what we love so much about and what we feel so committed to protecting this 5,500 acres here in the hill country.
And a lot of these experiences are one of a kind. It's very rarely that we're going to offer up a weekend for you to build your own schedule. I mean, that is really exciting for 10 people to be able to come out here and we're going to work with you on what works with your calendar. I mean, that just doesn't happen normally.
Right.
Keep in mind how special that is.
It's very special, Jared. So thank you for adding that because that is true. I want to say again how we are very excited about these experiences. We also just want to encourage people to think about a donation as well to our 501c3 organization. The programs that Jared was talking about earlier, all the wonderful opportunities that we had despite the pandemic, those were all supported by your generous support of our important and critical programs here.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure you know how much we appreciate that. And so we encourage you to look at the website, look at the information that Steve and Christina just so wonderfully presented to you. See if one of those wonderful experiences fits for you and your family. And also consider a generous donation to support our critical mission here in Central Texas and beyond. Speaking of the website and the way that the way that we've set this up, it's taken quite a bit of technological creativity and prowess. We pride ourselves at this organization on being creative and innovative. That's clearly true given our last year's first Selah Spectacular.
And successful.
Thank you, Jared. Picnic-a-thon, and now our second annual virtual event. Technology is important. And some of you may not realize this, but I've already told you I'm standing next to my colleague, Jared, who is both a herpetologist and a squamatologist. Got it right? But what you don't know just from looking at him, he looks like he's a biologist, but what you don't know is that he is also essentially the technical wizard behind a lot of what we're doing here, as well as the technical wizard who figured out how to utilize Eventbrite for our purposes here for our wonderful sale that Christina and Stephen have been talking about. So
move. I hope you get the Saturday Night Live reference right there. As the technical geek, the de facto technical geek, again, I'm a biologist. I'm sure there's a million better ways to do what we're trying to do today. But I figured out how to do it. And you can go to our website, bambergerranch.org. You can click on that link to go to the Selah Spectacular. And there, you can see the list of the items. And at the bottom of each item, you will see a click here link. And that will take you to an Eventbrite page. And in that Eventbrite page, you'll see that description again. And it'll show you the actual cost of the item in question. And then it will also, you'll be able to buy a ticket at 6 p.m. tonight. Okay, it goes live, and there's only one ticket per item. remember, it's a sale. It's not an auction. I couldn't figure out how to do an auction. Sorry. We actually had kids back on the landscape. So I'm very glad I didn't have to go down that rabbit hole. So at 6 p.m., you can click on Eventbrite through our website. You can buy that ticket and you can lock it in. And you're giving us today a $500 deposit on that item. And we're going to hold it for you. We're going to email you and we're going to figure out everybody's calendar, because not all of those items that Stephen and Christina did such a great job of describing are set in stone dates like the Oryx and the hunting experience is. We're very flexible on the herp day. We're very flexible on the bird day. I probably think you would have based that one around migration, and I could see Christina nodding at me, right? And there's a lot of other events out there that obviously we can't do the bats in the winter. There's just not going to be a lot of bats there. So we're going to work with you, okay? So you're just putting a deposit down today. But just because you don't want to buy one of those experiences doesn't mean you can't give us a donation. Every donation counts. Again, to reiterate, our dual part conservation mission is to be the best land stewards we can be to our 5,500 acres and to get the underserved youth out here on the landscape. Get those kids and their feet running around, learning about science by scientists. So that's it. That's the technical bulletin. Okay, just like that. There's not, oh.
Thanks, Jared. I got him back. Thank you very much. In all seriousness, thank you very much, Jared, and thank you for explaining how that is working technically. I have spoken already about the fact that we have an amazing team here, and that includes our board of directors. We have a fantastic board of directors who is led by an extraordinary chairman of the board. He's a really, really great guy, and just we all enjoy working with him. He's a great colleague. He's also got a ranching background, and so that is really, really helpful to us in terms of our land management and very, very, very good land stewardship that we pride ourselves on here. And so one of the things that is so amazing about Rusty is that he is also a very, very talented photographer. So I mentioned earlier that he's been helping us set up this wonderful setup that's allowing us to do this. He has provided so many wonderful photographs for our organization. Some of you might have seen the book that Rusty photographed along with David K. Langford. It's called Seasons of Selah. It's full of beautiful photographs. And so we're really lucky to have Rusty on our team for all sorts of reasons. And actually, this very, very exciting idea just came up. Stephen and Christina once again did such a great job of explaining our sale items and our Selah experiences that we're so proud to be offering today and through the month of July. And in addition to that last item that Christina mentioned, one of the other activities that people could choose to do is go on a photo safari of Selah Bamberger Ranch with said Rusty Yates. And that is an incredible experience because Rusty knows the preserve very, very well, almost as well as Stephen Fulton. But that's a really high bar to attain, knowing the preserve as well as Stephen. So that is something that it could also be a part of that wonderful weekend-long Selah experience. Would be a photographic safari with the very talented Rusty Yates. So that is a perfect opportunity for me to talk about something that we did last creative first virtual picnic and fundraiser, which was we asked Rusty to kind of talk about his photography. And so we recorded that, and we're really proud of the way it turned out. And so what we'd like to do right now is to show you that along with a slideshow of some of Rusty's beautiful photographs. So that's what we're going to do next. Thank you all so much for being with us here. Please stay tuned because we've got a lot more fun things lined up for you this afternoon. And without further ado, we take it away to our recorded video of Rusty.
Well, I can't imagine a better hill country spot to photograph in than Selah. Not only is it a beautifully well-managed piece of property, the land stewardship shows all over the place. You have multiple environments here, from our water features like Madrone Lake to our grasslands, our creeks, and of course we have very dramatic skies, sunrises, sunsets. Because we have relatively dark night skies, we also have some very dramatic stars. All in all, it's a wonderful place to photograph. It's a wonderful place to work. And what we do out here is important. It impacts not only this ranch, but our neighbors downstream. We have a wonderful outreach program here for young people, for adults who want to learn to be better land stewards. I can't think of a better place.
Thanks, Rusty. So I think Rusty did an amazing job of kind of just summarizing how this place makes one person feel, and that's his experience too. You come out here for one of the Selah Spectacular sale items, you can have an experience and get connected to the landscape just like that. And speaking of landscape, so Stephen talked about that oryx wrangling experience, and that is really exciting to be able to do that. And one of the things that's really important about our story is how we use those oryx in our conservation efforts. We are part of a group called the Source Population Alliance, whose mission is to keep the herds as genetically diverse as possible and send them back to their grassland homes over in Africa. But it's also to help keep our grass and our landscape managed. As grazers, we have to be very particular about how many mouths, how much biomass, how many animals are here on the range. Because just like Leopold said, the same tools that destroyed it can repair it. And we're still in that restoration phase. We're in our 52nd year of going strong with that. And one of those tools that ripped the range down was the cow. And the oryx, being a grazer much like cattle, could do the same thing if we had too many animals. And I think what the thing that really tells the story about our grazing management and how good Stephen is doing with that is the story of Snowpocalypse 2021. When we lost power in February and we had that big freeze. Our herd of oryx, strong. We only lost one animal throughout that whole experience. And when you think about an animal of Africa, it's really important to say, like, well, it doesn't freeze like that for an entire week in Africa. And all of our animals are healthy enough because we manage how many mouths are on the ground. And that's what grazing all comes down to. So I'm going to look over to my board man, Luke, and see if we're all queued up now, because Stephen's about to have a message to tell you a little bit more in depth about our herd, our horned oryx.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Fulton, and what you're seeing behind me is a herd of scimitar horned oryx. They originate from the Sahel grasslands of Africa, which is the southern parts of the Sahara Desert that get just enough rainfall to provide a sparse grassland. Mr. Bamberger became involved with the scimitar horned oryx in the early 80s, which at that time they were extinct in the wild, and after that for about 35 years also considered to be extinct in the wild until just recently. So Mr. Bamberger, with his association with the San Antonio Zoo, heard about the plight of this animal and decided that he wanted to try to help this animal and recover this animal and with the conservation of this animal. In the early 80s, I'm not sure exactly what year, 83, 84, somewhere around there, Mr. Bamberger was in conjunction with the AZA, which is the Aquarium Association of Zoo and Aquariums, partnered with them. He set aside 640 acres of the Bamberger Ranch, dedicated just to the species survival program for the scimitar horned oryx. They brought him 24 animals, and those 24 animals represented 31 different bloodlines. Today we are still working to conserve this animal, and not just the physical conservation, but also conserving the genetic diversity of this animal. So you may have noticed that many of these animals have ear tags. That's the way we can mark one animal separate from the other, so we can give them all an individual identity. That way we can ensure that we don't introduce animals together that are related, and we don't want to introduce inbreeding into our population. Some interesting things about the scimitar horned oryx, as a desert animal, living in sparse desert grasslands where they come from, they are actually very low maintenance. As long as you have green grass, you really don't even need water for them to drink, as far as a water trough or a stock tank. They get all the moisture they require from the green grass they're eating. Of course, we do have water available for them here. They are also very, very accustomed to our hot, dry summers. And they are also, if you noticed, they do have some impressive headgear, and those weapons they can bring into action very quickly. And they are one of the few species of antelope that have been recorded actually injuring and killing African lions in defense of themselves and their young. So though we have them in captivity, we are very careful as we are around them, because they can use those horns with proficiency. They are a true horned animal. So if they ever do break a horn off, it will not grow back, which is not a problem here. But as you can imagine, in the African setting, that would be nearly a death sentence, because they would have no way of defending themselves. We are working with the genomics, partnered with the Smithsonian and another organization that we're a member of, that's called the Source Population Alliance. And our goal is to map the genome, and that way we can determine exactly their lineages. In case paperwork or documentation was lost in the past, we can recreate that lineage, that pedigree, for each animal that we have. We have about 60 animals here on the ranch today. Over 30 of those are young ones that were born in the last 6 weeks. And that's also an exciting time, because each one of those young animals has to be marked for future identification. And the best way to do that is to catch them when they're just a day old or 2 days old. And as you can imagine, the mothers don't really like that. So our procedure for doing that is driving out in the pasture, finding the baby, jumping out of the truck, grabbing the baby up, and jumping back in the truck before the mama can get back to us and try to impale us with her horns. It does, however, make the identification of the mother of that baby pretty easy. She is obviously the one trying to kill you. But we record that information, and for each herd of females that we have, there's only one bull put with each of the herds, so we know who daddy is. And through that process of identifying the baby and ear tagging the baby, we know who the mom is too. So we keep those records pretty strict about keeping those records. The only other time that they are potentially dangerous to us and harmful to us is when we bring them into our working facility once a year to separate out babies, or at that point in time they'll be 10-month-old juveniles. Separate those out, and also give them a little medication to make sure that they stay healthy. So at that point in time, we have to separate each animal out individually, which they really don't, as a herd animal, they really don't like to be by themselves. So they resist that. Thank goodness we have protective equipment that helps us with that. Other good news about this animal, other than them being protected and conserved here on the Bamberger Ranch, is they have been, since 2016, there have been 150 animals, 150 scimitar horned oryx released into a game reserve in Chad. And of those, and the results from those releases is that now there are babies, there are calves being born in the wild. So those calves born in the wild in that game reserve in Chad are considered to be wild-born scimitar horned oryx. So hopefully their designation as far as extinct in the wild will soon change, because of that the good works that's going on in that game reserve. There's a lot more that we could talk about with the scimitar horned oryx. I could talk to you about them for hours. That's the high points. We will continue to raise the animals here and try to do our best to conserve the species and their genetic diversity. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time. Good morning.
All right. Well, everybody, the oryx are fantastic. And we talked a lot about how we are fundraising for our dual mission of conservation and education. And part of that mission is research. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the research we have going on at the Bamberger Ranch Preserve right now. And I would be so remiss if I didn't talk about the Margaret Bamberger Research and Education Center. One of the newest traits here at the ranch. It opened up in the August of 2018. And when you think research and education, the education component is really Margaret. Margaret was a huge factor in bringing so many kids out here and really engaging them in their love for the outdoors and inspiring so many youths. And we still get kids today that have graduated college and have their children now coming out during our annual Family Day and Picnic, which is the first Sunday in May. And God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll have that next May in 2022. So when we think about that Margaret Bamberger Research and Education Center, we think about education and how it's a classroom. But that research component is really important for the Bamberger Ranch too as we build an institution. When I joined the staff almost 8 years ago, or over 8 years ago, I'm old, leave me alone. We had to think of what Mr. Bamberger really wanted and asked me to do. And he asked me to start a collection. And he heard about these natural history collections like the one at the University of Texas and the Biodiversity Research and Teaching Collection at Texas A&M that I volunteered and worked for when I was in college at Texas A&M. But it was the Texas Cooperative Wildlife Collection at that point. And I brought that museum background to the ranch and we started cataloging insects. And we really got the kids involved in collecting insects and, as I like to put it, do my job for me. And then I met a young graduate student at Texas State University. Her name was Christina Farrell. And she started volunteering out here. And eventually she did such a good job we hired her. So we're really building the research and education collection to house things like this. This blue jay was prepared by a Texas State Wildlife Society member. And Christina and I, mostly Christina, teach the kids how to prep these bird specimens. And then we use these bird specimens in our teaching. And how many places can you go where we can literally put a bird in their hand and teach them? So when we teach adaptations to 5th and 6th graders, we can talk about the beak, and we can talk about the feet and the wing shapes. And we have specimens that demonstrate all of these things, and we can walk them through that, and we can challenge them. We have what's called an adaptation drawer. Well, they get a drawer of an animal that contains a wing, a beak, and legs. And then they have to tell us where they think that animal would have lived by looking at their feet, how it kind of what its natural history was like. They have to tell us how it would fly, because the wing shapes and the aspect ratios of those wings control how they fly. And then that beak really tells them what they eat. So by putting these physical specimens in their hand, we can teach them a lot about that natural history, and we can inspire the dirtbag biologists like myself and Christina and Stephen, don't forget Stephen too, to go outside and make this a career. You can get a job doing this. You get paid to travel the world and prepare specimens. It's fantastic, it's awesome. And I miss it, except that I get to do it right here at the Bamberger Ranch. So I only miss the traveling part. And I would also be remiss if I didn't talk about the universities that we're partnering with. So Texas State University still sends students out here, and we have graduate students that are working on a research project with the Mexican or Brazilian free-tailed bats. And they are testing a special frequency that will help deter the bats away from wind farm. And if we're successful with that, then we can help deter bats away from other structures as well by using that same technology, which is really exciting. So that really does fit the research, the education, and the conservation model, all with that one partnership with Texas State University. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this next project, which is near and dear to my heart because it's a project that I've wanted to do for a very long time. And a lot of times now, when you think about research, research is tied to grant money. And grant money is normally tied to, let's just say, species of greatest conservation need, or it's tied to endangered species money. Very rarely do you get an opportunity to do science for science's sake. And one of the really important things about getting the kids out here on this landscape and inspiring them to be a dirtbag biologist is letting them know that you get to do science for science's sakes occasionally. And this project really demonstrates that, because every project, science starts with a question. And so I've been pondering this question, and I've talked to my friends Harry Green and Toby Hibbets, and we've talked to other biologists like Connor Patch Adams and Dalton, and what we've determined is there's nothing known about this next species of lizard that I'm going to pull out. There's just not a lot of natural history known in Texas about probably the most fantastic creature in all of Texas, only when you're speaking about squamates, of course, this Texas alligator lizard. These Texas alligator lizards, Stephen and myself would find a dozen across the ranch, across the year. That was just incidentally. Very rarely do we get the opportunity to go out and seek and find them. And I was talking to Dr. Toby Hibbets at Texas A&M and talked to Dr. Lopez at the Natural Resource Institute, and they had a marine graduate student named Corey Fielder. And Corey was really interested in this, and he'd read the papers about the subspecies of Texas alligator lizard that they have in Mexico. And all that we know about alligator lizards here in Texas is published in the 60s and 70s by Dr. Harry Green, who has just recently retired and moved, is now our neighbor over there in Mason. So we're really looking forward to getting him out here and learning about this. And so when we think about that project in Mexico, and we think about these alligator lizards, how do you study a very cryptic lizard who has a weird natural history? We actually don't know a whole lot about its natural history. And that's where I keep harping on this science for science sake. What we're trying to do is get an idea of what these alligator lizards are doing when we don't normally find them. Normally, a spring, we're going to find half a dozen. That's from March to May. And then in breeding season, they get really, really active, and that's late September all the way through early December. So what are they doing the rest of the time? Well, to figure that out, what Corey's got going on is he's taken a radio, just like this, and of course we remove that yellow tape, and then we fix it, we glue it right to the back of the animal, and then we use a special flexible tape to wrap it, and then we release the animal. And in between that, we put what's called a PIT tag, or passive integrative transponder, in the animal. So if it drops the radio, or if the battery goes dead on the radio, these batteries only last about 90 days. So if for whatever reason Corey is unable to recapture these things, we will have the opportunity to scan it just like you would a microchip for a dog or cat, and know that we have found this one before. Those PIT tags have little numbers in there that correspond with the study. And so a lot of times we don't even have to touch the animal. We put on the headsets, you go out there with the big funny looking TV antenna, you track these guys, and then you can just wand them. And you don't have to put them back in hand until it's time to change that battery out. Now, you've heard my version of the story. Now we're going to kick it over to Corey in April on a very chilly morning, actually in April of this year.
Good morning. My name is April Sansom, and this is Corey
Fielder.
And we are here at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. Corey is a master's student at Texas A&M in collaboration with the Natural Resources Institute, studying alligator lizards. And we are in a part of the ranch called Turkey Hollow, and we are about to see an alligator lizard, which is extraordinarily exciting. Corey, could you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing out here?
Yes, so I've been out here for about a week, and we're in the process of collecting as many Texas alligator lizards as we can, because for the next year and a half, 2 years, we want to kind of see what their spatial ecology looks like, if there's habitat changes over season. And so we really want to focus right now on just getting as many as we can to help the research kind of push further later on in the year.
Fantastic. So what have you got in your backpack, Corey?
Well, right here we actually have a female Texas alligator lizard that we caught yesterday. And I'll show you guys what this female looks like.
Is that a special herp bag?
I don't know if it's special, but it is very lightweight, and so that helps with weighing it when the time comes after you've captured them.
That makes sense.
Here's our
Oh, wow.
here's our female. You can see what we've done. We've inserted a pit tag in her, so later on, if she loses her radio, we can identify which particular Texas alligator lizard this is. And also, you can see we put a radio on her, so that will allow us to track her in the near future to see kind of where she's moving up and down this hill. And so, yes.
She's really a beautiful animal.
She really is. Yes, she's ready to roll too.
Yeah, she's ready to get back in on that beautiful slope there. So Corey, this is right where you caught her yesterday.
Yes, this is exactly where I caught where Toby Hibbets, I should be more precise, found her right here.
So we're putting her right back where where you guys found her.
Exactly where we found her, so she can go about exactly where she was.
How long do you expect that radio transmitter will stay attached to her body?
Well, the battery life is around 90 days, but will it stay on 90 days? We really are not quite sure. So that's something we will find out
Sure.
in the next few months. But I guess we'll go ahead and let her down.
That sounds great.
Go about her day, and we'll see if we can catch her sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Look how she blends right in with that leaf litter. It's good camouflage.
Yeah, you really have to be observant because the three we've seen out here this week, like they are completely still on their movement. So depending on where you are and which side of the tree, you might completely miss them because they're not moving at all.
Right.
They blend in fantastically.
Absolutely, especially when she's not moving. Now, if you had to make a guess, would you suspect that she's going to hang out just right there for a while, or do you have any sense of what she might do?
I would say yes, you probably will, because observing the one I found over the weekend and plus other papers that I've read, some have witnessed them sit in the same spot for over 2 hours.
Oh, is that
Non-stop.
right? So for quite a while then.
Yes. I'm sure once she gets back used to her habitat in the zone, she'll probably get up under here, all these roots or somewhere out here, maybe move up to this rock and get her a good hiding spot, and she'll probably sit down there for at least until the afternoon when it warms up.
Right. Corey, I think it's really neat that you are, as part of your graduate work, contributing to the knowledge on this species, because what I'm learning is that there isn't a lot of knowledge on this species. So I think that's pretty neat that you are going to take some steps to make sure that we know a little bit more about this amazing creature.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting 2 years because this will really be the first baseline study of this species in the most northern extent of their range here in Texas.
That's great, Corey. That's really important. What an exciting graduate project to be working on.
That it is. And out of a great place as well.
Yes.
Great faculty as well, helping and guiding me through this and assisting me.
That's wonderful. And I certainly am not going to argue about it being a great place here. Yeah. Thank you so much, Corey. Yeah. I really appreciate you letting us participate in this re-release of this wonderful animal. And good luck to her and good luck to you in your master's program.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Luke, for playing that video. And you got to see right from the source's mouth there with Corey on that alligator lizard. And again, that was taken in April. We've learned a lot just in those few days or the few months that we've had in between there. And we have 9 animals now that we've been tracking and 11 that we've got pit tags in. So I would say that Corey's on his way to actually having a chapter that he can write about. So you've heard about my love and my passion for research. But I'm not the only one that does research or has students out here. So I'm going to kick it over to Stephen and Christina for their experience.
Hello again. Another one of my passions is definitely plants. They're a lot easier to study. They don't run away from you. They don't fly away from you. They don't, well, some of them do bite. Some of them do bite, yes. But when I first started working on the Bamberger Ranch, if you get a chance to talk to Mr. Bamberger, he would tell you that about a project with a little plant called the Texas snowbell. Now, the Texas snowbell is a federally and state listed endangered species. It's an understory shrub, almost like a very similar to a redbud. It has a very similar, as far as habitat, kind of a growth regime. But when I first started working in 2003, is when we started a reintroduction program for that shrub. And Mr. Bamberger would tell you all about that program. And first thing he would tell you is that he had one plant in the ground before I started helping. He's very proud of that fact. But we ended up more than doubling the known population of that shrub, which grows out in the watersheds of the Nueces River, the West Nueces, and the Devils River watersheds is where it naturally occurs. Don't know if it occurred outside those areas. That's just where that's where they've been discovered, still surviving today. But in 2006, after years of reintroducing this plant, I decided to go back to school and work towards a graduate degree. And of course, my plant of study was a Texas snowbell. I don't know if I had a whole lot of choice in that one, but it was a good research anyway. And the research, I was awarded a Section 6 grant, which is a federally funded grant. So the federal government shuttles that money to the state departments, like the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, where they then distribute that out to researchers like myself. And so the study was a multifaceted study because, much like the alligator lizard, there wasn't a whole lot known about this kind of nondescript, only had showy flowers for 2 weeks of the year. The rest of the time, you would have a hard time determining from the rest of the green that you see in the background. So there wasn't a whole lot known about the plant. So my research was pretty open. I really wanted to know as much as I could about the plant. So the first thing I researched was why. I tried to determine why it was in the endangered status that it was in. We had hypotheses, or wouldn't say theories because they weren't tested yet, but hypotheses that they were in that condition because of land use change, i.e. Angora goats for mohair was big out in that area back in the 50s and 60s, and those animals can do a number on browsing out your shrubs and plants. So I set up game cameras, motion activated cameras, and what do you know, I got pictures of lots of herbivores munching away on some of the few Texas snowbells that were remaining, but not in all the watersheds. It was peculiar. So I did learn a lot about that. It depending on where you were at as far as herbivory being a factor as to their decline. Also wanted to determine which pollinator was not only effective but most efficient. Now that took some time and some patience, but I managed to find out that the American bumblebee in the eastern parts and the carpenter bee in the western watershed, like the Devils River, were the most efficient pollinator. Cool. But honeybees are effective. So as far as pollination or pollinators, there doesn't seem to be a problem with the pollination of the plant and its reproductive status. So again, kind of went back to that. Maybe it was a herbivory. Did another study. Another facet of that same study was determining whether or not waterways or arroyos or dry washes were a viable means of seed dispersal. So in that part of the study, I basically soaked some seeds in some fresh water and replaced that fresh water. So again, simulating a stream to determine what effect that would have on the viability of that stream, of those seeds. Excuse me. And come to find out, up to 3 weeks of being submerged actually increased the viability of the seed.
Cool.
But anything past about 3 weeks submerged, it started to decrease the viability. So a viable seed dispersal method, those dry washes in the fall when they drop their seeds, you get a little fall storm come through there, washes the seeds downstream, disperses them, good to go. So still a lot to be learned about the Texas snowbell, and maybe we'll have a guest that'll tell you a little bit more about it later today. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is some future studies. Right now, I don't have any research that I'm overseeing specifically going on the ranch, but I am interested, and this is kind of a shout out to any grad students out there. I'm definitely interested in doing some vegetative surveys using some of our newest technology, i.e. drones. I would like to see if we could do some 3D vegetative mapping of the ranch. That way, if that's something we could repeat on a 5-year interval or maybe a 10-year interval, depending, so we can again monitor the change that the Bamberger Ranch, not just the Bamberger Ranch, but the entire hill country is going through with climate change.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
So,
It's me.
I'm kicking it to you.
It was almost perfect. We had a little wren, and I was like,
Sorry,
oh,
I
yeah.
talked too long.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, I wish I was more like Steven and well-rounded and could talk about plants and then hunting, but back to birds for me. So yeah, it feels a little surreal to be talking about research that I'm, conducting out here on the ranch. It's been about 2 years since I really kind of first got the idea in my head about what I wanted to do, and I didn't even actually fully work here at the time. I was working here part-time and, really loved the job. It was the education aspect of it. And I kind of said, man, this job would be absolutely ideal, 100% perfect, if I could still kind of scratch that research itch of mine. And so, just amazing that I can stand here today and say that I had my first successful field season of our overwintering grassland bird survey that I'm doing. So just a quick rundown on that, and definitely follow us on social media because I like to keep our audience up to date with my research and how we're doing. But yeah, just a quick rundown is that I'm monitoring our overwintering grassland bird populations, and I chose that avenue to research because grassland birds, if you were to Google search that right now, the first thing that's going to pop up is grassland bird declines. We've actually seen that since the 1960s, we've seen a 40% decrease in overall bird populations for grassland birds. And that is, I would say, in the U.S., the most threatened group of birds by far. And so whenever it came down to, do I want to work with an individual like the golden-cheeked warbler? No. As Jared mentioned, it's kind of easy to get traction whenever you're working with something that's endangered. So with my project, I kind of wanted to jump the gun and start looking at our grassland birds before anyone is critically endangered. And for me personally, science is the most exciting whenever you've got a long-term data set to work with because you can see that change over time. So that was kind of the most exciting aspect for me whenever it was coming to what kind of research could I do out here on the ranch. Considering we are a restored grassland savanna, that was also like, grassland birds, grassland savanna, just makes sense. So that was kind of a no-brainer for me in determining this project. And, we just had our first field season this past fall over the winter. We went from November to February. We caught around 300 birds, and we had approximately 35 different species, which was actually way better than I was anticipating. Whenever I was, just starting out, I said, I hope that we do well. Grassland birds are one of the sneakiest and cryptic, species. They are not easily seen. They're not even easily heard if you think about like a grasshopper sparrow who could be right in front of you and you may not hear him. So I was really, really happy with our first field season and how much traction we got with that. Now, we're also kind of doing another exciting partnership with, as fate would have it, a friend of mine who is doing her PhD at Texas A&M University. Talking to her about my research with grassland birds, she mentioned that she's working at A&M University looking specifically at pesticides and how that's influencing the birds. Is it in their bloodstream? What sort of effects are we having from that? How high are the levels? And so it just sort of worked out that I was doing my research and she was doing hers, and I said, you've got to come out to the Bamberger Ranch. It's perfect. And though that has only, we've been working for about 2 months with that, Dr. Meredith Anderson has come out twice, but that is another research project that we are really excited to have out here. It works perfectly with what I'm doing, so it's just this incredible partnership that we are really excited to once again have a nice long-term data set to monitor those grassland birds. Now, before I kick it to our video, I'll just mention that birds, like I said, can be very difficult to hear. Luckily, we have a fun video for you guys to watch that we actually put together a little more than a year ago. This was one of the first videos that we made whenever it was the pandemic, and we said, okay, what kind of cool, fun videos could we put together? So I'll introduce our mnemonic birding video that you might recognize me in it. So I'll kick it over to Luke on the. Hi there, Christina Farrell here for the Bamberger Ranch. Today I'm going to be leading you on a virtual bird walk focusing on bird calls and bird songs. Now it can be really difficult to learn bird songs, so I'm going to be using some mnemonic tools to help you learn these. A mnemonic tool is a word or a phrase that helps you to learn something a little bit faster, and that's my hope, is that by using these tools you'll be able to fast track the learning process. Here we are in our grassland savanna habitat. Now this is a really important habitat here on the ranch because historically much of the hill country was in a grassland savanna ecosystem. Currently worldwide, grassland birds are in decline due to habitat loss, so it's become
Hello there. We are back. Thank you so much for the bird video, Christina. That's something that we're really proud of. We loved that video when we made it, and we still love it now. So thank you both for explaining about your research, and thanks for that great video, Christina. The next thing that we are going to do is something super fun. We did this last year. We had a great time, and so we're going to do it again. And we are going to engage in a little bit of an activity that we like to call book chat.
Book chat.
Book chat. And so Jared and I are here to talk about some of our favorite books that really influenced us, whether it was in our career as squamatologists, or in my case, my career as an environmental scientist, community-based conservationist, or books that speak to us for different reasons that have to do with science and exploration,
Absolutely.
which of course what science is all about, right? And that's one of the things that Jared and I both really love about science is the exploration, always finding something new, always thinking of new questions to try to figure out answers to, and the fact that the scientific process always comes up with more questions. That's one of my favorite things about it,
Oh,
too.
absolutely, and I think that is why we read so much. You know, you're never too old to stop learning. And I've always held it near and dear to my heart that the minute you stop learning is when you're dead.
Yes, and we don't like that. So there's another thing that Jared and I have in common is that we're both a big fan of really good jokes. Now, some might argue that they're not necessarily good jokes, but I think they're good, and Jared thinks they're good. So Jared, for our book chat segment here, would you start us off with a little bit of a joke, please?
I will. Why did all the robins go to the library?
Goodness, Jared. Oh, goodness. Why did all the robins go to the library?
To catch the bookworms. App, app, app. Jokes with Jared has been canceled thanks to Simone and Christina. But if you want to bring it back, leave a comment right there for us.
Absolutely. Please feel free to do so. So now we're going to shift to a little bit more serious because we like to have a lot of fun, but we also really do want to talk about some books that have been really influential in Jared and my experience. So Jared, why don't you start us off?
Well, thanks, April. So the first book I want to talk about is a book that is hot off the presses. This is brand new. My dad just gave it to me, and this is called The Caulfield Letters. And Carl Caulfield is one of the most respected and well-known herpetologists of all time. He ran the Staten Island Zoo for years and years until he died. And this book is really special because it's communications with his colleagues, some people that he met in the field and then befriended, and some people that were part of his zoo department and then left to go take other jobs. And it's this really nice cacophony of these interpersonal relationships. And upon reading it, I really thought that I have to read the first sentence of the back jacket that was written by Dr. Jonathan Campbell. Dr. Campbell is a professor emeritus up at UT Arlington, and he has a property out in Mason County, so he's very close to us too. All around good guy, did a lot of his research in the Yucatan. So his books on Belize were really important to me as I just got out of school. But he writes, during the course of our lives, most of us are fortunate enough to know one or two individuals that, for whatever reason, have a tremendous impact on us. And while I never got to meet Dr. Caulfield, it's really important that I talk about those relationships because a lot of my relationships are built upon Carl, because they're built upon reading his book, Snakes and Snake Hunting, and his books, The Keeper and the Kept, as a kid, which really inspired me to become a herpetologist. And when I was reading this, I was reflecting on all the relationships that I've built because I'm a herpetologist. Some of my best friends, like Connor Patch Adams and Dalton Newharth, I would never have known them if it wasn't for being a herpetologist and being out in the field with them. But I think the biggest relationship that Caulfield has really shown me is the relationship with my father. And I often think about how it would be different if he hadn't gotten me into it. And all the fantastic trips that we get to go on. My vacation last year to Arizona, we got to see all sorts of stuff. And it was really amazing to have my dad, even in his 70s, scrambling along those talus slopes, just slightly behind me. It's kind of a reverse of how we were when I was a kid. So that was really special to me. And I need to think too about how different my life would have been growing up now with how connected you are with social media and the internet and forums. And I don't know that I would be a researcher or scientist first when I go herping. Very rarely do we actually go herping for fun these days, because there's always some kind of question, or there's always some kind of quest out there to go find something. Why? I was just talking to Brandon Bowers and Corey last week during our downtime with the Gator Lizard Project, and we were talking about why Blanco County, where we are right now, has these distribution gaps with reptiles and amphibians. And I would rather do that than go out and find some of the more common stuff that is so easily to find here. But a day in the field is still better than a day in the office. So I highly recommend this book right here, The Caulfield Letters, or finding a book that makes that connection with the natural world like Carl did for me. April, what's your first book?
Well, thank you so much, Jared, for that. And before I introduce my first book, I just want to say that I want to remind the world that Jared and I are both Aggies. And I had this wonderful, wonderful experience to go on a study abroad trip when I was at A&M, which was a little bit before Jared was there, with Dr. James Dixon. Who, and just hearing you talk reminds me of all the wonderful stories and lore and wonderful experiences that so many students over the years had with Dr. Dixon.
Yeah.
And I was so fortunate to get to know him, even though I'm not a specialist in herps like Jared is. I was so fortunate to get to know Dr. Dixon in those days.
Yeah, Doc was a larger-than-life personality, and much like Carl was, and Doc's influence was that next generation right after Caulfield's. And so you have all these wonderful herpetologists that are wandering around now that had Doc's influence. So that's a great connection. And see how small the world is? We are all connected somehow. Yeah.
Well, that's a great opportunity for me. That was a hard word to think of. To introduce my first book. So I am, the first book on my list is this book. It's called The Beak of the Finch. And it is written by Jonathan Weiner. And it is a wonderful, wonderful book that chronicles the journey of two scientists named Peter and Rosemary Grant and their investigations in the Galapagos. What they did was that they traveled to the Galapagos Islands and essentially followed the footsteps of Charles Darwin in his study of the finches there that we're all, many of us are very familiar with. They not only retraced some of Darwin's steps, but they also put some new and modern twists on the research that Charles Darwin did that is the foundation of so much of our understanding of the natural world today. So very, very important work. This particular book has been to the Galapagos.
That's called a macro flex, kids.
I had the wonderful and fortunate opportunity when I was working in South America some years ago to take a trip to the Galapagos after I was done with my field research. And so this book came with me, and I'm so grateful for my friend Julie Wilkie for returning it to me after I lent it to her for her trip to the Galapagos. And she returned it to me after several years. So it's always good to have a friend who won't forget to return your books.
Yeah, and you're a lot nicer than me. I don't lend my books out.
All right. Well, on that note, do you have a second book that you'd like to talk about,
I
Jared?
do. Thank you, April. And so, surprise, surprise, Jared's going to show you another book on natural history of reptiles and amphibians.
That's strange.
I know, isn't it?
That's...
And I wanted to tell everybody about this new book that came out called Beloved Beasts, and how fantastic it was to hear these success stories of animals that were brought back. But I can't find my copy because I must have lent it to somebody, which is why I had to say that.
If you
So
had lent it to Julie, you would have it back.
that's right. It would have gone all around the world twice and back to me. So instead, I figured I would pay homage to the other side of my family, my wife's family. My wife is from Massachusetts, and her parents retired and moved to Falmouth on Cape Cod. And when I first took the trip up to the Cape, it was during the winter, and believe it or not, not a whole lot of herping going on in the wintertime. But it reminded me that I think I read a book when I was a kid and it had something to do with an island chain. What is that thing called? And it's actually called an archipelago. And so this book by James Lazelle, and the photographs are by Martin Michener, is called This Broken Archipelago. And it's all about reptiles and amphibians throughout Cape Cod. And they do a really nice job of giving you the natural history of how that landscape was formed. Like where my parents-in-law live in Falmouth was actually part of Maine before the glacial period. Pushed it down once, then twice, then again, and eventually where it settled where it is now.
Interesting.
And so,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so driving through in the wintertime, getting to see everything, I started thinking how much of what Michener and Lazelle were talking about is still there. And so I reread this recently, and I sent a copy to my father-in-law, and he just goes, "This might not be a question you want to ask." And that's so going from a book that talks about how there's hope, also has to kind of remind me that there's stories like this that even in 1976, when this book was published, which means it was being written 10 years prior to that, they saw climate change coming. And they saw what the effects of habitat fragmentation and what splitting up of properties does. And so I see this parallel here in the hill country. Mm-hmm. And the Bamberger Ranch, just to remind everybody, has been quoted as a beacon of hope. That this piece of property, our 5,500 acres, are intact in perpetuity. Right. As a 501c3 organization, that your donations and your buying of the Selah Spectacular items help with. And so, really interesting book. And again, it was written, and you can tell it was written in the 70s. But I'm going to end with this. One of the things, and that this book really left me with as I reread it, was one sentence: the greatest collecting tool a scientist has are his students. And that ties it back to the hope that I want to leave all of you with. Habitat fragmentation is real, climate change is real. There's only so much we can do about that. But the education component of what the Bamberger Ranch does, inspiring the future dirtbag biologists like all of us that you heard from today, getting those kids out here and having them ask questions and be able to go out birding with Christina, being able to talk about the scimitar horned oryx or the plants with Big Steve, or the herps with me, or everything with her. So direct all the hard questions on biology to April. Okay? That's what we're here for today. So there is hope, because we're inspiring the next generation of students that are someday going to read Big Steve's book and be inspired, just like I was with this book, to go out there and get something done.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jared, for drawing those parallels between that wonderful book that you were just talking about and the real challenge that we have here in the Texas Hill Country, that is fragmentation of family lands. And that's a real issue that we all need to be attentive to. And that's a very, very important part of what we do here, is talk about landscape management, and whether that's one piece of land that encompasses 5,500 acres, or whether that's a piece of land where there's people working together to manage a landscape that is separated into different parcels. It's very, very important, and we're really proud of our leadership as an organization in that thought and attention to landscape management here in Central Texas.
Absolutely. Our conservation mission helps with our education mission, and it helps get that conservation mission out even further. See how that
Exactly.
works?
Yes.
Mm.
And again, it's worth repeating what Jared also mentioned, which is that all of your generous support to our nonprofit organization helps with that conservation and
Absolutely.
education mission that we're so proud of.
Absolutely.
So thanks again for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, April. Let's talk about your other book.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. For my second book, I don't actually have a copy here, but it's a book that was written even before the book that Jared just talked about. It was written in 1954, and it's a book called The Immense Journey, and it's written by Lauren Isley. Have you ever read?
I wish you'd have told me you didn't have it. I'd have gone into the bookshelf.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, it's right inside there. That makes me very happy to know that you do have a copy, because it is an incredibly written, beautiful reflection on the intersection of science and the human experience. And even in 1954, it was very well received by the public, which was surprising for a book like that at that time. And I remember reading it. One of the reasons why I chose it is because I first read it when I was in high school. And because of that, I feel like it's one of the foundational books that really set me on the path that I'm on today in terms of my passion for grassroots conservation and my passion for education and helping people learn that everybody has a hand in conservation.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That is. And I like how it came after the Transcendental movement. So it was kind of like a reconnect back to what Walden and Emerson, what Thoreau was doing through Walden, and what Emerson did through his writings too.
Right. So we kind of brought all that together. And once again, the other thing I love so much about it is that it's so well written. And so you're really able to explore that connection between the human experience and science. So absolutely. Well, that's great. That's another book that we have in common then.
We keep finding these.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And so you or me?
Well, since I just talked about Lauren Isley, why don't you go next?
So I'm gonna deviate from my herp and natural history background, and I'm gonna show you a book that is again near and dear to my heart, called Afield. It's a wild game cookbook that tells the story of Chef Jeffy Griffiths, who owns Diadui in Austin, and you can go support him. And he's a wild game chef, and he only produces food in his restaurant that is from Texas. So it's all locally sourced, it's all sustainably sourced. It's a great mission. But if you're new to cooking venison, this would be a good thing to do if you're gonna buy the Selah Spectacular Hunt with Big Steve, okay? So Big Steve will take you through the way, and then if you want, I guess I could show you how to cook a thing or two, because I happen to read a lot of cookbooks. And Afield is one of my absolute favorite ones, for sure.
Well, Jared, that's great. And how wonderful that you have your book there called Afield, because, Jared, we have a lot in common. My other book that I brought is also called Afield. Can you believe it?
That's pretty interesting. It's almost like we planned that.
Except that we didn't.
It's true.
We actually didn't plan it. We only half planned it.
Yeah.
This book, Afield, is not a cookbook. It is portraits of Wisconsin naturalists empowering Leopold's legacy. So my colleagues all know that I spent quite a bit of time in Wisconsin earning my graduate degrees from the Gaylord Nelson Institute of Environmental Studies at the UW-Madison. And Wisconsin is a wonderful, wonderful place that has a very, very, very strong conservation legacy because of Aldo Leopold, obviously. John Muir spent some time in Wisconsin, Rachel Carson, all of these wonderful people who paved the way for modern conservation and environmentalism had connections to the state of Wisconsin. So this book is a wonderful reflection on modern naturalists in Wisconsin. And the best thing about this book, and again, I think many of you, including Jared, can relate to this. The best thing about this book is that it was given to me by a very, very dear friend of mine who lives in Wisconsin. And she shared this book with me, and that's really one of the most special things about it. Yeah, so how fun that we both chose a book called A Field. Different books, same name, both great books.
It's almost like we're outstanding in our field. Jokes with Jared. But I will digress and just remind everybody that Wisconsin and Leopold's legacy has the oldest grassland restoration project in the country.
It sure does. It's called the Curtis Prairie, and I have cross-country skied for many, many, many times around that prairie, which is totally legitimate.
Yeah.
It's fully restored. It is a place. It's in the UW Arboretum. It's a wonderful place to go, and as Jared said, it's pretty much the first example of restoration, and there's still so much research that goes on in that prairie today.
Yeah, absolutely, and that just ties back to how Leopold really is the father of modern conservation, and those 5 tools, again, that destroyed it. Tune into our series, Leopold Live, if you want to learn more about the 5 tools.
Absolutely.
But can also rebuild it, and Leopold has wonderful writings about his experience restoring that grassland. And his farm. And last year, Christina did such a wonderful job of reading a segment that we often share with the kids called Thinking Like a Mountain. And so as we reflect on Thinking Like a Mountain, the Bamberger Ranch kind of has a new book out, don't we, April?
Yes, that's exactly right. The Bamberger Ranch does have a new book out. I think we have it right here.
What are the odds?
Look at this. My stories, all true. And there is J. David Bamberger right there on the front of the book. This book is written by Pam LeBlanc. And you'll also see that there is J. David's spouse, the wonderful Joanna. And there, let's have a moment of silence for Corey Dog. That's Corey Dog right there. J. David likes to say that Corey Dog is the finest dog in the United States.
And Texas, too.
You got it. So this is a great collection of J. David's stories. Pam did a great job of bringing those stories together, and she spent a lot of time with David, and they both just had a lot of fun doing this project.
Yeah, and I really like how she intersperses her relationship with David to David's relationship of the budgeting conservationist that he is, and kind of builds on stories of selling fried chicken to always remembering this dream of wanting to do where we work today and where we're filming live right now.
Exactly. So that's one of our books associated with us here at Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And here's the second one.
Look at that book.
Look at this book. We already sung the praises of the photographic talents of Rusty Yates and David K. Langford, who are the photographers of this gorgeous book called Seasons of Selah.
Yeah, and Seasons of Selah is, so you saw Rusty's photographs during that slideshow. Those were taken during the first part of the pandemic. And so these were actually taken over the course of a year here. So you really get a sense of what a normal year, a non-pandemic year, is like out here at the ranch. And it talks about our research and education and J. David's wonderful connection and story. And it happens to be written by maybe your father.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, look
it
at
sure
that.
Is.
Yeah. And I will have to tell you, if you're interested in Seasons of Selah, page 75 is the absolute best.
75, Jared?
Yeah, page 75.
Is that right?
That's right.
Now, I've read that book from cover to cover a couple times.
Yeah.
It's very, very good. But I'm not sure exactly why 75 is such an important page.
75 is really important because it tells the story of Herp Day.
Oh.
And if you want a day, an experience like Herp Day that involves me teaching you, like those days involve me teaching your father who wrote about it, and so many kids and university students, you can have that with our Selah Spectacular Sale. Again, they go live on Eventbrite, which you can find the links through our website at 6 p.m. this evening. But we're not done yet talking about books, are we?
We sure are.
Got one more, don't we?
We got one more to go. Before we introduce that one, I will say that Jared and I had trouble picking books because there's so many, and there's many, many more that we would have liked to mention today that were influential to us.
Yep.
But we just don't have time.
Sure.
You can certainly comment or reach out via Facebook if you'd like to hear about more titles that are particularly important to both Jared and
Yeah,
I.
I can talk books all day.
Yeah, me too. All right, so, but for today, the last book we're going to talk about is this book. It's called Water from Stone, The Story of Selah, Bamberger Ranch Preserve. That's where we are.
Oh, look at that. Funny how we keep coming back to that.
This book was written by Jeffrey Green, and this is a wonderful book that also talks about the story of J. David Bamberger, our visionary founder, and his experience growing up in Ohio, coming to Texas. We're not going to give all the secrets away because we want you to read the book and we want you to come for a tour or a visit here to Selah, where we'll be explaining more about that story. But it talks about his passion and how he was compelled to really be a pioneer in ecological restoration here at our preserve.
Yeah, and the illustrations in this book are from his late wife and near and dear to our heart, Margaret Bamberger.
Right, whom you spoke about earlier in terms of the Margaret Bamberger Research and Education
and
Center.
her impact on our education program.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
One of the many things I love about this book is that I have come across many people, whether it's someone who comes out to Selah for a visit or whether it's someone who I'm chatting with about Selah, all sorts of different situations where the person who I'm in a conversation with says, "Oh, Water from Stone, I have that book. I've read that book. I know that book." It happens a lot. Does that happen a lot to you too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I wish it didn't, but it's really, it just harps again on how connected we all are.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely.
It's in its 11th, 12th,
Yes.
14th printing from Texas A&M Press.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Texas A&M Press, a wonderful group of Aggies.
Yeah.
And so that's really fun. It happened again very recently where I was in a wonderful conversation with an amazingly interesting person, and she said, not only did she say, "I have that book," she said, "I met Jeffrey Green."
Oh, that's a special
And
treat.
that was super cool. Yeah. So thank you so much, Jared, for this book chat. It's been really fun. Again, reach out at any time via Facebook or other social media if you want more book suggestions. And always, always keep learning.
That's true. And if you happen to find yourself on a backpack or maybe an overnight trail hike out here, you can maybe see some of the sites that Mr. Luke here is going to kick this video to right now.
Absolutely, which is a perfect reason to say I always love to take a book on a backpacking trip. Maybe not a book this size, but a book this size would be completely reasonable for a backpacking trip, just like you said, or a hike that someone might actually be able to engage in one of our Selah experiences.
I've brought you to a location that I consider my favorite spot on the entire ranch. We call this our grotto. I can't say it technically it is a grotto, but I guess a better description would be a cave, a karst feature, almost like a cave or a miniature amphitheater. How this area was formed, which likely took thousands of years in the least, is by rainwater flowing over the stone, through the stone, around the stone. And since rainwater is slightly acidic, and our limestone here is basic in reaction, every time it rains we have these tiny chemical reactions that takes place where some of this stone becomes dissolved. So, and as you can imagine, that's a process that's very slow. It would take at least thousands of years for something like this to be formed. This is one of our favorite spots for those visitors that can join us here. It's not the easiest easiest location to get to, but we try to bring as many kids groups to this location as we can. It's quite a bit of a hike, and just to get down to this spot, you have to have a little mountain goat in you. But it is well worth the trip. Thank you for joining us at this special location. It is better in person, so can't make a promise, but come see us and maybe we can get you here. Today we are standing in a grove of shagbark hickory. I'll tell you more about those in just a few moments, but first I want to tell you how we discovered this spot. About 11 years ago, I think it was in 2009 in the fall,
Kill your mic. Well, thank you for that, Stephen. So again, that hike experience is going to be really unique, and Stephen just highlighted some spots that not everybody gets to go to. And there's more spots that we know of for this backpacking, hiking experience, little geocache action going on. Now, I want to take time, that's such a beautiful film, and you've seen the Oryx film, and you've seen the bird film, so I have to give a special shout out to somebody who is instrumental in providing those films to us, and that's Zach Chambers, zachchambers.com. He's a still photographer based out of Houston, Texas, that happens to be Rusty's son. And when the pandemic first started, he came and he sheltered out here at Selah, and we threw a still photographer into a video photographer's life. And we started making all these films, and he was really instrumental into seeing last year's very successful virtual fundraiser to fruition. And so big shout out to Zach. And again, I need to harp on the entire team from last year, which includes Simone Gable, who is now doing her PhD in Flagstaff, Arizona at NAU. So I've got the next video ready to go, if Luke gives me the jump up. And this one is going to highlight, it's very short, it's only a minute long, and it's going to highlight that Batty Starry Night. And with the Batty Starry Night, I didn't want to show you what an emergence looks like, because you have to come out and see it. I want just enough to tease it. So Luke, take it away.
You are joining us at the observatory, the astronomical observatory that we have here on the Bamberger Ranch. It's a neat spot where we are able to show our visitors, especially those children, some of our brilliant night sky objects that maybe you don't get to see because of the city lights.
Thank you so much, Jared, for that video and for reminding us of one of the wonderful Selah experiences, the Batty Starry Night. And also thank you, Jared, for your shout out to everybody who helped last year. In our first virtual fundraiser, it was a tremendous amount of fun, and it took a lot of people. And I'm going to just continue that thought with thanking everybody this year. We still have a lot more to go. Very exciting stuff coming up, including a surprise. But everybody has worked really, really hard on this, and our team is still working diligently to continue in our live stream. So thanks to all of you very much for all of your help putting this together. And thank you to all the supporters who are so generous to our nonprofit organization here, Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. One of the things that we have really loved here at our preserve is having an internship program. We've had interns who have spent a lot of time out here helping us with all sorts of activities, helping us with our dual part mission in conservation activities as well as environmental education. And we had a particular intern who was very, very, very interested in fly fishing, which is something near and dear to my heart, because one of the things that I like to do is go fly fishing with my father. And so this particular intern was really, really big on fly fishing, had guided all around great fishermen. And so what he did for us last year was star in a video that talked about the basics of fly fishing and how to engage in that activity right here at our very own Madrone Lake. And so, as you remember, one of our Selah experiences that we're offering today is a fishing day here at Selah on Madrone Lake. And so that will be guided by a very experienced guide, which is probably going to be one of our current or former interns here at the preserve. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Luke, who's going to play a video for us with one of our favorite interns, whose name is Logan. Hi, Logan, if you're watching. And he's really going to talk to you about the joys of fly fishing.
Hello, my name is Logan Tussey. I'm a geologist from Austin, Texas, and I had the privilege of interning for the Bamberger Ranch about 7 years ago. A lot of my time spent out here was learning about the land and how to treat it and how to appreciate nature. And one of the things I did a lot to pass the time was fly fish. And so we're here at Jacob's Ladder on the Bamberger Ranch, and this is a great fishing location. Today I'm going to just talk a little bit about fly fishing, some of the different basics of how to do it, and some of the basics of how to fish on the ranch and in the Texas Hill Country in general. When I lived out here, I lived a short drive away from this location, so I'd spend the afternoons coming down here after work, tying flies, fishing for the local fish here. And I'd learn throughout the day, working with our biologists, what kinds of small critters I could use to replicate flies for fishing. So crawfish and stoneflies and different small little nymphs that are active in these ecosystems. They make great bait to imitate when you're making flies, and it makes a really great fishing experience when you can replicate something you've seen in nature and execute in the wild. Just to talk about some basics for fly fishing, first thing to focus on are types of flies. There's a wide variety of types of flies. So in here we have these large streamers. These are flies that are going underwater. They're supposed to look like fish and larger prey. And on this smaller box we have dry flies and nymphs. So these are supposed to look like very small insects. The nymphs would be the underwater nymphal phase, and some of these larger ones would be the actual flies themselves. So just so you can get an example of some of the size variations for flies. So they range anywhere from a very large streamer. You might use this on the Texas coast, or you could use it in a setting if you saw a particularly large bass you were going after. This is one of my all-time favorite flies. It's called a Clouser minnow. This specific one is actually called the Naked Lady. It looks clear in the water and it just flashes like a small bait fish. This is a very small fly that would sit on top of the water and look like a small insect that had landed, and you can see those wings potentially. They're very small. And next we have these small nymphs. So this is a small weighted fly that would sit down in the water and look like some sort of nymph insect. And this would be a particularly great fly out here with all the small sunfish and bass and things that primarily really feed underwater. So we're going to fish with one of these today. Before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about the fly rod itself and fly fishing mechanics. This is the fly rod. This is a fairly lightweight fly rod. This is a 3-weight. Weights range anywhere from 1 or 2 up into the higher numbers that you would use on larger fish. Out here at Bamberger Ranch, the fish, they're smaller. They're not, it's not a huge tarpon or a huge redfish on the coast. So you can use a smaller rod to place more delicate casts and things like that. So a fly rod is fundamentally different than a spinning rod. The spinning rod functions with a reel and a very lightweight line, and there's usually weight at the end of your line. That's a lure or a weighted hook. So all the momentum you're getting to cast is coming from what's at the end of the line. Whereas a fly rod, all of the weight is in the line itself. So as you are casting back and forth, the more line you have out, it is weighting the rod, and it's what's called loading the rod. So the more line that's out will bend the rod further, and that's what's going to propel your fly forward. And the flies are generally very, very lightweight compared to the weight of the line that is out. So first basics, you just got to figure out which hand you want to cast with. That's just personal preference. And once you do that, the major rule in fly casting is that if you were standing on a clock with my body being the center of the clock, you want to remain between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. You don't want to go all the way to 9 and to 3. You just need to go 10 to 2. So all that motion, it's in a relatively small area, but as you're doing that, your line should be going out and back, and you're loading that rod, and you should be able to get the line further and further, and then you can actually release and present your fly. So we're going to do a casting demonstration here in a second, but the other big thing to take into account is as you are casting, the real challenge in learning to fly fish is knowing when your line is all the way out. You want your line to go all the way back and reach as far back as it can go before you bring it forward to keep that momentum and to keep the rod loading. So that's a bit of a challenge, but we're going to try to do it here today. So the spring-fed water out here at Bamberger Ranch is very clear, which is great for fly fishing because a lot of fly fishing employs a method called sight fishing, where you're literally looking for the fish that you want to catch instead of, you know, kind of blindly casting into a murky pool. So we're gonna do a little casting demo, and then we're gonna look to actually catch a fish. Now, despite how clear the water is, one of the best tools you can have for fly fishing is just a simple pair of polarized sunglasses. So the midday light out here puts a glare on the water, and just by having sunglasses on, it makes sight fishing a lot easier because it cuts the glare off and you can cast to the fish you're actually looking for. So just some casting basics. So once you've chosen the hand you're going to hold the rod with, you're then going to put the fly in your other hand. Just remove it from the reel. And remember, we're going to focus on going from 10 to 2. So 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And you can see how that's already moving the line back and forth. So you can let out a little bit of slack with your non-casting hand. And your hand is really the reel. The hand is what's doing all the line maintenance. So you can go 2 to 10 to 2 to 10, 2, 10. And it might be hard to see on camera, but I'm trying to let the fly hit the very end of its rope before I jerk it back to the other spot. So as you're going back and forth, you just kind of find a rhythm with that, and you begin to let out line with your non-rod hand. So I'm letting out line with my left hand, and I'm just going back and forth. And this is something that takes practice. I'm not particularly gifted at it, but if I can do it, anyone can do it. So as there's more line out, my rod is bending more, I can go further. So now, you know, we're probably 30 feet out. That's about as long as a cast as anyone needs out here. So when I release this, it'll take the rest of my slack out, and now the fly is in the water, and you're gonna simply strip. So this is just called stripping. So I'm pulling about 6 inches of line maybe at the most at once, and I'm just doing that to mimic the motion of a fish, and we have a small fish on. So he's going down in the weeds, but I think we can get him. Looks like a small sunfish. Yep. Come on, buddy. It's a red-breasted sunfish, I believe. I'm not the biologist. I am a simple geologist. So here you go. Beautiful sunfish from the Bamberger Ranch. Now you can see the sun's out for us now. I'll put this guy back in the water. Go for a little guy here in a second. light of the sun. You're hungry in there. Small bass. Here we go. Little largemouth bass it looks like. The naked lady fly. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope you learned a little bit about fishing out here on the ranch and fly fishing in general. And come on out and visit. This is a great place to spend some time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luke, and thank you so much, Logan, for that wonderful demonstration of fly fishing at our very own Madrone Lake. I mentioned earlier that I have the privilege of being the executive director of Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And there's really nobody more important in terms of our preserve's legacy, our preserve's leadership in conservation in Central Texas, and our preserve's vision of a place where people can come and learn about restoration and land stewardship in a very, very meaningful and impactful way. There's nobody more important to that story than Mr. J. David Bamberger, our founder and visionary creator of Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. If you've had the pleasure of meeting J. David, you know that he is quite a wonderful storyteller, a kind-hearted human being, and a fantastic leader in conservation in Texas. He's one of my many conservation heroes here in Texas and beyond. We also mentioned to you that we had a very, very special surprise in terms of our Selah experiences that we've already mentioned to you. My colleague Christina, who's been doing such an amazing job at our social media posts on both Facebook and Instagram, is going to be making a post about this very, very special event that we are going to unveil right now. Okay? This is so exciting that it's amazing. One of the Selah experiences that we are offering on sale as part of our Selah virtual fundraiser is a snow bell planted on your property by none other than J. David Bamberger himself, who I have right here standing next to me, who's going to explain to you more about this very, very special item.
Well, gosh, if you everybody has the same excitement, enthusiasm in the breath as April, the world would be a lot nicer place to live in, I'll tell you that. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this plant. It was in 1994 that I made a pledge to try to save from extinction this particular plant. It's called the Texas snowbell. At the time I made that, a lot of my friends and people that came to the ranch from time to time says, David, why don't you try to do something to rescue this plant from extinction? So I took up the challenge, and I was fortunate to have my right hand at the time was Stephen Fulton, whom you'll hear from. But the big one was to be able to go out. Now, I'm an old peddler. I worked door to door for a big part of my life, quite frankly, 17 years. So I know what going door to door really means and how difficult it might be. But I'm here to tell you this plant is native to 3 counties in West Texas. And when you go to the West Texas back then, when the Endangered Species Act was just passed, and let me tell you, when you told somebody when you knocked on their door that you were looking for this endangered plant, they run you out of there because they didn't want to believe that anything about the endangered species. So it took me 4 years to break bread, so to speak, with the different ranchers to get access to their ranch. After a lot of work of those first 4 years, seeing on the gates of all the ranches a sign that says private property keep out, and they had all a club basically. But I've fortunately had a lot of history and a lot of articles being written about Bamberger Ranch and myself. Fortunately, I carried those magazines with me, and I'd leave one here and I'd leave one there. And so the next time I came around, they took it a little more seriously, and I gained access. I had to recruit a lot of help, but fortunately we did. We had, as April was describing, we had a lot of interns and young people that wanted to contribute something, and we rounded them all up and took them over there. And over the period of time, we recruited 24 different private landowners that represented 124,000 acres. And on those ranches, we went searching for the Texas snowbell. Now, at the time this all began, the literature and the science and the biologists that were working with this plant said there were less than 100 of the Texas snowbells still alive. Well, we've got to work on those ranches, and we found over 286. So we've already made a major contribution to the success of our program. This plant is easy to find in the spring because it has a beautiful white flower. And I think if you can look, the white flower is right here. I don't know if this photograph's big enough to show it, but it is an unbelievable sight to see. It is so beautiful. And then in the fall, the white flowers now drop and produce a seed. The seed is pretty large, but it's in a pod, and there's 2 and sometimes 3 seeds in each one of those pods. But we began to collect the seed, and right here on the ranch, we propagated and raised over 1,000. At the request of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we returned the plants that we grew, and we planted them out there in the same watershed from whence we had collected the seed. That was a requirement of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it took a lot of work and over 28 years to get to the point where we are today. There is no place, this is bragging, but I guarantee you it's all true. There is nobody in the planet Earth that has one of these to sell. It doesn't exist. We are the only people that even have it in a container. And what you're going to like, if you should be the lucky bidder on this particular plant, I personally will come to your ranch or to your house and plant it for you. If it's on a ranch, I'll even bring a corral and a beautiful setting, and plant it along with some flowering plant that will grow below it. And then, voila, I am able to put this is unbelievable, but this is the plant, a permit to have possession of this plant signed off by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department with the blessing of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. If you want something in your home or on your ranch, you don't need to mess around trying to get some animal, because this is something you're going to be so proud of. I don't know how to tell you. On Selah, we have planted 19, and some of them are already 15 foot tall. We have collected seed from them, folks, and we have supplied this seed to every one of the state of Texas organizations that are considered for storage of these seeds for lifetimes. I don't know exactly. I'm 93 years old, so I don't get all this straight anymore. But I'm only going to tell you this is, to me, one of the major accomplishments of my life, and I want to share it with you. So if you want something special that nobody else has, don't think of buying a Mercedes or a Lexus. That's trash compared to this. So, so come on. Come on. Now, April, I'm sorry if I'm disrupting your program, but this is really something special. And so that will be tied on to your tree to show it to your friends when they come. Now, let's see. Let me see. Let's see. Okay. Styrox texana, bell-shaped flowers in the spring and seeds in the fall. Collect the seeds and take care of them and plant them. If you need help on that, you can get a hold of me or Stephen Fulton here, the ranch manager, who's helped me along with about 20 other volunteers. And we're so proud of them. And we're proud to be part of the Bamberger Ranch Preserve, and particularly of these plants. Nobody but you and I have them. So let's get on with it, folks. Bid this thing up to $5,000 and I will kiss your rear end. Oh. Thank you,
Thank you, J. David. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, well.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for telling us the story of the snowbells. And thank you so much for, along with Stephen Fulton and other colleagues, for saving that species from extinction.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to tell you that we've done that, but the Interior Department said I'd have to have 10,000 of them planted.
Right.
And my life isn't going to take us that far along.
Well, we're working on it. Thank you so much, David.
Well, you're quite welcome.
Thank you so much for being here.
Bid them up.
That was wonderful. That is a taste of how amazing
you're the
our
damnedest
visionary
cheerleader
founder,
I've ever
J.
had.
David is. I want to make sure that everyone understands how grateful I am for J. David, everything that J. David's done. None of us would be here.
Oh, you want to get that,
if J. David were not the visionary that he is. None of us would be in the position we are in terms of caretakers of this very important, beautiful piece of property in the Texas Hill Country. And none of us would be doing the jobs that we feel so passionate about without J. David Bamberger. So we are all very grateful to everything that he has done, and we're grateful for him for coming on to our virtual show today. Jared, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, April. So we've had a very exciting day today, and I just want to recap how our wonderful Selah Spectacular item sales are going to work. So you're going to go to our website, step 1. Step 2, you're going to read the descriptions, and at the bottom of each one of those items, there's going to be a link to the Eventbrite page where you, at 6 p.m., can go put your $500 deposit down for each one of these items, including the very special Texas Snowbell. So we've got the birding excursion with Christina. We've got the hunting weekend with Big Steve. We've got the snake demo with, you guessed it, me. We've got the fishing experience with one of our interns or former interns. We've got that very special swimming hole. And if you follow us on social media, you know that we have another special swimming hole available on the ranch now. We have the Batty Starry Night. We've got the scavenger hunt hike. We've got the beekeeping experience. We've got the oryx wrangling. And then we have the ultimate build your own Selah Spectacular weekend. Okay? So again, go to our website. Click on the Selah Spectacular at the top right of the page. Then go to scroll all the way down till you see the items listed. Go to the Eventbrite page and buy your ticket at 6 p.m. It's first come, first serve. Much like a Southwest airline, you should have that and just keep hitting refresh, hitting refresh until it comes up. Okay? Now, reminder too, if you don't want one of those items, or maybe you can't generously support us with the cost of those items, we will gladly accept your donation for the entire month of July. And we'll on August 2nd, we'll come back to you live. But I've mentioned to all the people that have made this happen today, and you heard me mention Zach Chambers earlier, and I want to go back to Zach. And we heard from Rusty, his dad, talk about his experience in photographing Selah. And so we're going to kick it to an interview I did with Zach right after we finished kind of filming, and right just as he was leaving the ranch to go back to work as a photographer in Houston.
Jared here for the BRP, and with me today is a special guest. He's somebody that's been helping us out throughout the pandemic. Zach Chambers. Zach, tell us a little something about yourself.
Well, I'm a photographer, now a videographer, based out of Houston, Texas. It just so happened that my stepdad was chairman of the board, Bamberger Ranch. I think he's been that for
a couple of years now.
Couple of years now. So when the whole pandemic hit, I kind of had the opportunity to come out here and basically quarantine myself, which ended up being kind of a blessing because I was able to not only practice my craft, but also, learn a lot of stuff about the ranch and nature and all sorts of things, really.
Yeah. So have you always been connected to nature?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I used to go outside as a kid. I used to play in the woods all the time and, read about it. And I wasn't necessarily obsessed with it, but I always had some kind of connection to it. But then it kind of, I don't know, I've been living in cities for a while, and I think it kind of went to the wayside just a little bit. But
So has being out here at the ranch kind of helped you reconnect with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And being surrounded by people that are really into it and have a lot of knowledge of, plants, animals, everything.
Yeah.
Grass, water.
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a still photographer, what has it been like to essentially learn an entirely new skill? We kind of just threw you into this when Rusty said, hey, Zach's coming out. He's a photographer, but he'll do videos. And we were like, oh, okay. So how's that experience kind of shaped your experience out here at the ranch?
It's been kind of easy because there was no it's not a client breathing down my neck for a deadline or something like that. So in that sense, it's been kind of nice because I've been able to slowly learn the software and the organizational aspect and the sound, and there's a lot that goes into it. So it's been nice to have that kind of leeway going into it.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the different aspects of it. What is the part that you like the most, and what is the part that you like the least?
I always prefer shooting, setting up the shot, finding the angle, just that whole idea of it. But everything else can become kind of tedious, especially editing. It takes a very long time, and sound is, it's finicky, and there's an art to that as well. But I'm, coming from a still and photography side, I'm so used to being behind the camera. That's where I'm comfortable. Yeah. So everything else is kind of It's just not as natural for me.
No, I understand. So for all of you out there, if you really like the videos that we've been producing, Zach has put in a tremendous amount of work on that. And it is not easy, like he said. Still photography, to me at least, is a lot easier than producing these videos. So is there a special moment that you want to share that has happened out here at Selah while you've been here?
I don't think there's any specific moment. I've spent so much time out here that it's just there's so many things that I've done and experienced with. There's a lot of people out here that all have different characteristics and all have different skill sets and knowledge. So just my individual experiences with those people have all been really fascinating and really fun. Whether it be going out with you, picking up rocks, or doing video work, or looking for herps, or going out doing the bees with Steven, or sunset photo shoots with Rusty. It's all been really nice.
That's great. Spoken like a true portrait photographer, So it's all about the connection with the people. So, well, Zach, I really appreciate your time out here and all your hard work that you've done for the ranch and all these videos and our Selah Spectacular Picnic-a-thon. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
Just if you get the chance, I think everyone should come out here and visit.
Jared.
Hello again. It's me, Steve again. I promise this is the last time you have to look at me before April signs us off. But before we leave, I just wanted to, and I'm gonna try to get through this. I just wanted to say a few words about a real special person that's no longer with us. This last year, we lost Leroy Petrie to the coronavirus. I thought I could talk about it. If you haven't met Leroy Petrie, and if you came on a water workshop, you definitely met Leroy Petrie, and knew all of his passion about the Bamberger Ranch. He started working for Mr. Bamberger in 1970, 1 year after Mr. Bamberger purchased it, and we say that Mr. Bamberger was the architect and Leroy Petrie was the engineer. So whatever Mr. Bamberger could think up, Leroy Petrie made happen. And he's missed. He's already missed. He will continue to be missed. So just help us in remembering a great person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen, I can't watch someone else tear up without tearing up myself. So thank you so much, Stephen, for that really wonderful remembrance of a person that we loved very much. And I know Leroy particularly loved working with you, Stephen. And like Stephen said, we miss him greatly. And we are so grateful for everything that Leroy did for this ranch and for the land here and for the people here. So, Stephen, thank you once again very much for those very kind words. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. We could not do what we do in terms of following our very important dual part mission that we've been talking about a lot today. We could not do it without the support of very, very generous friends and supporters in our Selah community. So we thank you so much for all that you do for us. We hope that you will take a minute to look at those wonderful Selah experience items that we as a team have prepared for you, and consider placing a deposit on them. As we've been saying repeatedly, we also appreciate any support of any kind. We are a very, very careful steward of resources that we have, both in terms of our landscape and our financial resources. So rest assured that your contribution will go directly to the fulfillment of our mission. And I'd like to thank so much. Again, the team here. Luke, you're an absolute champion. Thank you so much for running the soundboard all day. Stephen, Christina, Jared, my amazing team. I can't tell you how much I enjoy working with you guys. We would also be, I would also be remiss to not mention Lois, our other colleague. And thank you so much to Joanna and David who are here. Thank you for all of you, all that you do. And thank you, David, again, for starting this all off. This wonderful, wonderful vision that you had so many years ago and that you are still working at every single day. Thank you, Rusty and Ellen, both of whom have been so instrumental in today's events and today's production. And thank you all again for tuning in. Another reminder that those wonderful Selah experience items that we have been talking to you about today will be available for you to place a deposit on. Remember, there's only one of each of them. Will be available at 6 p.m. today, July 1. And it is a first come, first served basis, but the experiences will be available to place a deposit on until July 31, also at 6 p.m. And during that entire month of July, we encourage you and thank you in advance for supporting our critical mission of conservation and education in the Texas Hill Country. This is a perfect opportunity for me to shout out and thank those of you who have already contributed. We've received a very, very generous donation from a number of people, and we thank you very much for getting us started and kicking us off on our month-long virtual fundraiser. And thank you to the others of you who have already made donations. And thank you in advance to those of you who will make donations during this month of July. We also want to remind you that we'll see you again on August 2nd. That's a Monday at 12:30 p.m. We're going to be going live again on that day to talk about the beauty of the month of July, to talk about the Selah experiences, and to once again join you live for some great stories about Selah and probably some pretty good jokes too, because Jared and I will both be there on August 2nd. So once again, thank you all so much. Thank you to this incredible team. Thank you so much to our Selah community and the supporters of Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve.